Well, hey, welcome to Crossroads and Catalyst, the podcast with Shanita B. I am your host. This is where we discuss the thoughtful, wise, and strategic perspective at a crossroads can be the catalyst for change. Is money moving you or preventing you from moving? And by that I mean, are you at a crossroads because of financial obligations? Maybe you want to make a move, but because of fear of instability or the fact that you may not make as much money if you took a job that you actually preferred, maybe that's what's hindering you from moving to another job. Well, I really want us to get into that because I think all of us at some point or another have been faced with the challenge of deciding what course is good for us when it comes to the type of work that we do and trying to find a good fit for what we want to do with our lives. I can recall this is more recent than not that I was at a crossroads, and I shared a little bit about that in one of my earlier episodes. But specifically, when it came down to the move that I wanted to make or that I thought that I needed to make, it didn't come down to money. And the reason why it didn't come down to money is because I had financial freedom, which I think gave me a lot more objectivity to make a choice that was good for me rather than just being held back because I had so many financial obligations that it required me to stay at a specific job. Now, while I'm glad that I did choose to stay for the additional time at that moment, it didn't come down to me having to count dollars and cents and determine what bills do I have, when are they due, how much money do I need to meet those needs, because I had a savings account. And I've been a saver and a planner pretty much my entire life. So that comes pretty naturally to me. But I recognize that doesn't come naturally to everyone. And so we want to talk about that because it really is important that you operate with a level of financial freedom so that you can make a good decision for yourself. I saw a survey from payroll.org, and it was conducted in 2023. And what this survey said is that roughly 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That's a lot of people. And you might be included in that 78%. What we want to do is we want to get into the why we're living from paycheck to paycheck. Of course, we have the inflationary pressures, but there are also the spending habits. And spending habits are very personal. People are very touchy when it comes to talking about their money and how they spend their money. And as adults, okay, you can be touchy, but if you're not spending your money in a good way, you're going to find yourself in a bad way. How about that? I can recall when I was a kid, my father taught me, and actually both of my parents taught me that you should save some money. And my father drilled into me that you should not live beyond your means. And he would go so far, he went so far as to purchase magazines for me. This is, when people actually had magazine subscriptions. When I graduated college, he got magazines for me, and they were money magazines, money and investing. And I read those things voraciously. And I was really glad that my dad got those magazines for me because not only did he teach me those things while I was growing up, but he wanted to reinforce for me the importance of planning for my future, for my financial future. And he didn't want me to have to rely upon anyone else. He wanted me to be a fully functioning, productive adult once I graduated college. And I believe that that's what I was doing when I would read those magazines and I would have conversations with my father about those things. And so what I want to do is jump into some of the reasons as to why some of you may be at a crossroads in your career because you can't or won't move to a job that you would prefer because you're being held back. So when we break this down, we can look at, I think, a couple of, maybe three different areas. We have debt, we have lifestyle, and we have fear. The debt could be student loans. And if it's beyond the student loans, maybe it's medical debt. And if it's beyond the medical debt, maybe it goes strictly to the lifestyle choices. But whatever the reason might be for the debt, there's something that you can do about it. You don't want to be stuck. You don't want to be stressed and frustrated. You want to get yourself out of a pickle and you want to be productive so that you can make some good decisions about your career. So, uh, looking at the debt, why are you in debt? Again, if it comes down to the student loans, you can continue to pay that debt and it might take you a while, but maybe you really start to focus in on those debts to try to reduce them and get rid of them. When it comes to debt, again, like I just mentioned, there's student loans, there might be medical debt, and then there's the lifestyle choices. You have everything to do with the lifestyle choices that you make. When my father would tell me not to live beyond my means, I took him seriously. Maybe some of you didn't have someone to do that for you. Or maybe you didn't realize that living beyond your means was exactly what was occurring. And now you recognize that every check, your money is gone before the check hits the bank, before the draft hits the bank. And now you're trying to figure out, well, how do I get out of this mess? Well, one of the things that you do is you do a debt snowball or you do a debt avalanche. And what are those? Well, the debt snowball is simply you listing all of your debts and selecting the smallest one and paying it off first. It's important that when we're deciding to make some changes that we get some quick wins early in the process, and doing a debt snowball will help you to do that. Now, if we turn our attention to the debt avalanche, what you're going to do there is you're going to list those debts, but you're going to list them with the highest interest rate that's due first. And then you could start with that. Now, that might be the highest balance. You have to decide which one of those is most important to you. But either way, take a look at it and take it seriously so that you can draw down or, excuse me, reduce the debt and eventually eliminate it because you don't have to live in debt. It's all about a mindset. And because this podcast is about helping you to see things from a different perspective, part of that is going to mean that you have to shift your mindset about what you think regarding money. While money is personal, it is something that is necessary so that we can live and take care of the obligations that we have, provide for our families, and maybe even have a little bit of discretionary income so that we can afford some of the nicer things, whether that's vacations or a nicer house, nicer home. But you don't want to find yourself house poor and car poor because you're putting all of your money into a big house that you cannot afford or into a luxury car that is costing you way more than what you anticipated. Don't allow yourself to be tied down to those things. There's a proverb that says the borrower is slave to the lender. And that is true because what you'll find yourself doing is constantly working to pay off debt that is consistently and constantly and significantly growing. And it's not going to go away unless you decide to make some choices to move through that aspect of life. So then what about the aspect of you're working a job that you don't want to do and there are opportunities or that have come up or opportunities that you've seen that you would like to apply for, but you know that those jobs are not going to pay you what you need to be paid? Well, I could see why there would be some hesitation in taking a job that's going to lower your salary when you really can't afford a lower salary. So that means that you have to make some choices and you might have to make some hard choices. So, A, you could apply for the job. Maybe you can interview and maybe you'll win them over and you'll get the job and you can take it. And then you'll have to reduce what you spend in order to keep up with the pace of your financial obligations. Or you can change course where you are, pay that debt down so that you'll be in a better position so that down the future or in the future, excuse me, you will be able to take advantage of another opportunity that you think would be better suited for who you are as a person and the work that you would like to do, the mission that you would like to accomplish, per se. These things are extremely important, and I don't think that we can underestimate them uh, because fear is at the root of not taking a job that's going to pay you lower or a lower salary. I think I could say that even with some of the jobs that I've had in the past, they didn't always pay me exactly what I wanted, but they met my need and I was able to gain something from them. So you don't want to discount the fact that you might gain something better for your resume, which will in turn help you down the road and might actually catapult you into a whole other salary category and open a new world to you. And you want to be able to take advantage of that. But if money is holding you back, then that must mean that you have to make some changes in other areas of your life because I don't think that it's reasonable to expect that a company is going to always change your salary because you have a desire for that. I think all of us have a desire to have a bigger and better salary. but what is the job that you're doing? What is the going market or the market rate? And are you being paid the market rate for that job? If you are, well, then there's really not much that you're going to be able to do in the way of getting more salary unless you can prove and demonstrate that you have provided additional value above and beyond the scope of that particular work. If it comes to the notion that maybe you're not getting enough money and you're doing work that is adding way more value than is anticipated, you're doing tasks that are not necessarily unrelated to the role, but are uh, seemingly beyond the scope of the role. If you're meeting the need and you're not being remunerated for work that you are doing that is adding value, well, maybe now it's time to have a conversation with your boss about that. Now, you have to be prepared to go into a conversation like that and be able to provide some receipts. It's not going to be enough for you to walk into someone's office and say, "Well, I think that I deserve a raise because I've done A, B, and C." You want to make sure that when you go in with a humble attitude. And I've actually had to do this for myself because I am all for advocating for yourself because in most instances, no one is going to advocate for you. And so you have to show your worth. And if you've demonstrated that in your work, it will be easy to do. So you want to approach it with an attitude of humility and gratitude, but you also want to be able to highlight and demonstrate the work that you've done which is worthy of an increase. How did I do this for myself? Well, what I did is I looked around the organization. I looked at other positions that were similar to mine, and I wanted to see if there were any major changes in the job descriptions or even in the salary ranges. Now, while I was unable to see salaries, I was able to see if there were any changes to the job descriptions or if there were any changes of the category and how they were graded, which might not necessarily mean that a salary increase had taken place, but it might mean that there were some other nuances that were applicable. And of course, HR keeps track of all of that information, but it was not for me to know that. But I just went in, I scheduled a meeting with my manager, and this was after I had served as an interim CFO. And I had also felt, and not just felt, it wasn't just a feeling, I knew that when I had negotiated my salary for taking the initial role for which I was hired, the HR representative was not at all open to negotiating my salary beyond the minimum level. And I just thought that it was typical of HR processes for internal candidates. I'll say it like that because it was unreasonable. Because had they hired someone external from the organization, they would have paid that person much more than what they were offering to me, and they would have done it without any pause or issue. But because I was an internal candidate, and the reason let me stop and go back. Because I was an internal candidate, I was told that what was being offered to me was reasonable because of the salary gap from my then current job to the new job that I was taking, that it was such a significant jump that really they were not open to negotiating that. Even though I had the experience, they didn't want to count some of the other job titles that I had had because of some structural changes or organizational changes that were made. So there were a host of issues that were problematic to that negotiation process early on. So I took the opportunity once I got into the role and after I had served as an interim executive, I took that opportunity to revisit my salary and have an open conversation with my boss. And thankfully, he was amenable to that. And so I shared with him my experience when I was hired in and told him about that. And I also told him about the things that I had done to make sure that our processes and our structure remained stable and steady during that interim period, that I took on a lot more responsibility, which is basically what I was called to do, and I did it with a good attitude. I did it with ease, and I did it with a collaborative demeanor, which, you know, all of those things matter. And we were able to have a heart to heart, and he went to bat for me. He went and took care of business and got it done. And I was therefore able to continue down that path, with the work that I was doing, and I was successful in negotiating a higher salary for myself. Now, it's not always going to end in a positive way, but you have to remember that how you approach it is going to be just as important as the message that you're trying to convey during that conversation. So, we've talked about a number of things here. We've talked about debt, we've talked about lifestyle, we've talked about fear, we've talked about negotiating salary. There are a number of things that have to be considered when it comes to dollars and decisions when making choices for your career and whether or not to move. If you are at a crossroads in your career because of debt, then think about making some lifestyle choices. Now, this is going to matter regardless of what type of debt that it is. Now, student loan debt, it's pretty much fixed. You can probably renegotiate some interest rates, but when it comes to lifestyle choices, you can directly impact that and you can impact that immediately. And what do I mean by lifestyle choices? Lifestyle choices would be, are you one who is going to Starbucks every day or the convenience store coffee drinker and you're purchasing these things on a daily basis? Do you have a lot of streaming services that you're paying for on a regular basis? Are you a luxury brand purchaser? You like luxury cars? You like big houses? Or maybe it's not even big houses, depending on where you live in the country. It doesn't have to be a big house. It could be a small house, but you still have a big mortgage. You might have to consider downsizing. Believe me, the peace that comes along with being able to rest your head at night after doing work that you actually have an appreciation for and have a desire to do, it's going to make a world of difference. So you have to consider these things carefully. And I know that in today's society and culture, we're not accustomed to putting things off and uh, what is the word that I want to use? We're really not accustomed to delaying gratification. We want everything now. But if you think about it, if you have everything now and it's causing you to live beyond your means, what you've done is mortgage your future. And you don't want to be the senior citizen who is down and out and Social Security and whatever else, what other retirement monies that you have coming in are not enough to take care of you. And it can get that dire. And I don't want to see you live like that. So if you're at that place in your life where you want to make a change, but you just think like you can't, you feel like you can't, and it's because of the money, well, you tell the money what to do. The money doesn't tell you what to do. It's the other way around. You have control over that. And if you're in a position where you're unable to renegotiate a salary, because it might not just be that simple, or maybe you're working with a manager that is not amenable to that, or maybe the organization is not financial in a financial position to where they can accommodate that. Well, you still have a choice to make. You can still show up to work and do your job, and you can continue to look for another job, or you can make those hard decisions with some of the lifestyle choices that you have and cut some things out so that you can get out of debt, so that you can have the financial objectivity that you need to make a good decision regarding your next move for your career. So I'm going to close with that. And I just want you to be aware that if there's anything that you've heard thus far that has sparked something in you or caused you to think differently about it, well, make a move. Make a move and do something about it. Again, if it comes down to being in debt, decide if you're going to do a debt avalanche or a debt snowball, but make a decision to do something. If it comes down to realizing maybe you're not being remunerated according to the work that you're actually doing, have some conversations with your boss and with HR at your organization and see if you can make some headway there. And remember to have a good attitude about it. And if it comes down to uh, maybe you just want to do something different and it's just not as simple as taking a job that pays you lower, well, again, it comes back to, how are you spending your money? How do you think about money? Are you willing to make some changes? There has to be some kind of give and take. Long term, are you going to be better off by making some changes today that will impact your future. Don't continue to mortgage your future because that's not the way. You're going to be stressed, you're going to be frustrated, and you're not going to be able to grow. And because work is something that is a part of what we do on a regular basis, we spend a lot of time at work. You don't want to go there begrudgingly. So make some changes. And we're going to end there. And just remember that every choice calls for action and every challenge fuels the journey. Just keep moving. Until next time.